Do you think, and I've read a couple, not just in this country, but others, former government officials saying they believe there's some spiritual connection to these things.
Well, I think, if you were to back out to the 100,000-foot level, there certainly is a phenomenon. And how do we quantify that? Well, theologically, we can quantify that as, angels, demons, that kind of thing. Many people with religious belief systems espouse faith in that regard, and they believe that a phenomenon exists. And really what we're seeing here with the UFO UAP subject is probably just another facet of that same phenomenon.
But the conventional explanation for the U.S. government, among those who believed it was hiding these facts, the explanation for why was the government doesn't want to show panic, doesn't want to admit weakness in the face of its adversaries, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Those explanations do not account for the behavior you're describing.
Yeah, at first,
they're hiding something real that implicates them. And if they're talking to these entities, whatever they are, and I believe on the basis of evidence that the U.S. government has made contact and has had continuous or at least sporadic, but over a period of years contact, you don't need to nod or shake your head, but that is my belief based on talking to people. Like, what is that?
Yeah, if there's certainly, a relationship that was cultivated with non-human intelligences, hypothetically, I guess, to play off of what you just said, good or bad, it's almost like we were afraid after 9/11. Dirty bombs, terrorists. Okay, well, that's nature. That's life. Yin and yang of the universe. If there's malevolent non-human intelligences, okay, well, that's a fact of life. You don't hide it. Because what if the U.S. populace needs to be prepared for something someday?
Well,
hypothetically.
And it's also not their right to hide it because they don't own the government. The public does, actually.
Exactly. And it's just, I understand the reasons at first, but like you said, I think it's just the moral decay and the decay in leadership. And once again, well, we don't want to admit we did all this stuff years ago.
But also, if the U.S. government has had contact with these entities, and again, it is my informed belief that the U.S. government has had contact, what are they talking about? What is that?
Hey, I would like to know too. I mean, I grew up watching Star Trek, so I mean, I say that kind of, whimsically, but like, well, great. I mean, of my generation under 40, that's like, we're not shocked. That's cool. Like a Gen Zer who's 18 would want to study physics if they found out this stuff was real.
Yes.
Like this is how you boost STEM in this country, for goodness sakes. I mean, this is like the most exciting, yes, a little scary, but overall it's exciting. I mean, nothing's happened. We're still living. I'm able to talk about this and nothing's happening, to the, the world, if you will. So I think it's exciting for young people, and I think it's the right time to do this.
Going back in history, I mean, there are all sorts of mysteries about history that we, just can't explain even now.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like it would not be surprising to learn that people 3,000 years ago had contact with these.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the works of Jacques Vallée, a famous researcher. His character was portrayed as the French character in Close Encounters of the Third Kind by Steven Spielberg. That guy exists. His name is Jacques Vallée. And he has a PhD, and he's a smart scientist, but looked at this, and there's a couple books, like Passport to Mongolia and some other stuff, I'm probably butchering the name, where he looked into antiquity, this phenomenon. So when people say, oh, it's probably adversarial technology, etc., we've been seeing the same stuff since antiquity. And this should also potentially enforce stories in theological texts, say the Bible or whatever, that people actually saw. Ezekiel's wheels, as Tim Burchett has espoused publicly, maybe that actually happened. Now, unfortunately, you're bursting maybe a worldview or a bubble for some people, but it actually ultimately it might enforce people's belief systems, because stories in the religious text weren't fable, allegory, or whatever. They happened. And I'm not saying all of them did, but there might be evidence if we were openly and honestly studying the subject in more detail.